Raymond, is this supposed to rain today? It's 2:30.
Got 1 minute.
2:30 on us.
George is getting people to do players. Who's that woman talking to now? Jonathan.
Don't let him leave without getting that stuff on. I'm broadcasting, so everything is next week on. I hope this sounds better today.
blessing on all the people traveling to and from. We ask that every service would be a blessing to them around the world, specifically here right now today. Again, we thank you and we ask that you be with us and inspire what is done and said and protect us. Let it be a great blessing. We ask this and pray and look forward to the return of our Savior and King, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Now, if you would, just turn to page 214. Everybody needs to sing good, although I can't know it. I get much hair today. Kennedy, yeah, I got three, 2 males and 1 female. And she looked at him and said, well, how'd you figure that out? He said, well, 3 of them were sitting on a beer can and the other 2 were on the floor. Do we have any now? And then,
Yeah, gentlemen, here, I want to make sure everybody can hear me. We're trying to figure things out, which I'll make an announcement later on the sound, so bear with us for a few weeks while we get a few bugs worked out. But I wanted to see 2 weeks for having church camp out. So a number of us are going to be gone. I need to know how many of you are planning on attending here for services in 2 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this kind of gives us an idea of how we're going to start our services. So thank you.
Paul, you had none?
I was going to have a countdown in 2 weeks on the 24th.
Came out 2 weeks.
We
Diane?
have a guest speaker next week. Cliff Patrick will be here, and there will be a potluck after church. So we'll send out an email this week reminding people too.
Okay. Any other announcements? Do we have a prayer request?
Here, announcement. Church of God, 9207 Pennsylvania, is having their Super Sabbath next week. I made a mistake announcing it sometime earlier, but I was in error. It is this coming Sabbath. All are welcome.
What time?
Okay, Old Santa Fe Road, we moved.
Yeah, what time? Neil, what time?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Rock the hour, 9:30.
And it's all day long, right?
Yes. Afternoon, whatnot, singing and praising and everything that goes with it.
Back on the back, motor where there's a car back there, it's, I don't know how many, I'm having everybody know that Carol Miller back to Carl in the ditch the other day, broke her collarbone. And spent 3 days in the hospital. She's over golden years nursing home or convalescent. It's just down the road from where we met over last year at that community center. Just down on the left there over with. And then quite a few of you know Tom Anderson, he broke his hip Monday, Tuesday. So he had a hip replacement. He went home this morning. So we've had a lot of people. I'm sure most of you heard on the news about the wreck with the van, the church kid. That's Brian Ford, oldest daughter got killed in that car. So they were going back. According to the paper this morning, it blew the tire out. And it loaded out, tacked out the trailer. Looked like it went down a pretty good bank there. Do we have any other prayer requests, Diane?
I was just going to mention the Brian and Jennifer Foy's address is in our directory under Friends of the Church. So everybody needs their addresses in there.
Paul?
I'm requesting prayers again for Debbie Cassee. She's in Research Hospital and her cancer is progressing really fast, but she did call this morning and asked me to specifically thank everybody here for their prayers and that she would appreciate continued prayers, and then she'll probably be going home tomorrow or the next day on hospice.
Okay. Anybody else?
I can use prayers also. I've got an appointment this Thursday. More than likely, I'm going to need another set of radiation treatments, but hopefully with prayers, maybe I won't. But I think they're going to blast my leg this time, which is really kind of annoying. Since I thought I just gained a bunch of strength in it, that's going to really knock me down a little bit.
Okay. Like for you to keep my wife's sister in your prayers. She's so
Great eternal God in heaven, we come before you today with a heavy heart, knowing Hannah Foy, Brian, Jennifer Foy, and his family. We don't also understand these tragedies like this, Father. We just ask that you give us strength, and of course, the comfort and give them strength. Brian and Jennifer, thank you for your love and your Son, Jesus Christ. We know that our ultimate healing is in your kingdom. And we look to you for that. We've heard of others with pains, problems, just physical ailments with their bodies. We know you know who they are. We ask you to be with them and intervene in their lives as well. Ask that you be with David Bruckner, and hopefully that cancer will be completely healed from his body. Thank you for everything that you do for us, the words of wisdom and kindness, passion and mercy
I will be reading Psalms 19 from the New King James Version. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utter speech, night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard, and their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices like a strong man to run its race. Its rising is from one end of heaven, and its serving is to the other end, and there's nothing hidden from its feet. The law of God is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired they than gold, yea, much fine gold, sweeter than honey, and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them your servant is warned, and in keeping them there is a great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse me from secret faults. Keep back your servant from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless, and I shall be innocent of great transgressions. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're kind of working with the sound system, trying to work out a few bugs, so it'll take a little while to get all of this in order. We have a lot of moving parts here, but I really would like your feedback about whether or not you can hear. If you're having trouble hearing, you're sitting in the back, raise your hand. I'll try to speak a little louder, but we have a lot of moving parts that we have to kind of get working right, which would include telephone hookup and live streaming and the sound of here in this building. So we're working on it. We're going to get everything worked out. It's just going to take a little time. And I hope everybody can hear me right now.
I hear clearly, and the sound system in the video is doing fine too. It's coming through, and I can hear you clearly on that house.
Okay, so we're hearing fine from here. So that's good. The sermon today, if you're looking for a title, is The Politically Incorrect Jesus. Because I think Jesus was one of the most politically incorrect people trying to walk the face of the earth. If you think about it, he hung out lepers, tax collectors, women and children, which was a no-no for rabbis in those days. He hung out with stinking fishermen and shepherds. He also hung out with Pharisees and religious bigots, sinners, and worst of all, he hung out with Samaritans. Who were these Samaritans? Why were they considered to be the scum of the earth? And why was the feeling mutual back and forth between the Jewish and the Samaritan people? Why was there this animosity of two peoples who both believed in the Torah and both the books of Moses, and both claimed they were worshiping the same God? And why were these the first people that Jesus wanted the apostles to go to after they preached the gospel first in Jerusalem and then in Judea? You remember that in Acts 1, he gave a specific order of how he wanted the apostles to preach the gospel. He said Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then to the rest of the world. Why this special status for the Samaritans? And why was there so much hostility among the rest of the people to them? We're going to take the first few minutes of this sermon to talk a little bit about the history of the Samaritans, where they came from, and why that animosity grew between the Jews and the Samaritans over a period of centuries until it culminated here in the first century. We first get introduced to them in 2 Kings chapter 17. And I think many of you are familiar with this passage. It's been talked about in the churches of God quite a bit. When the northern tribes of Israel were taken into captivity by the Assyrians, the southern kingdom, or kingdom of Judah, was not impacted. Well, they were not conquered by the Assyrians, but the Assyrians took the northern tribes, transported them 1,000 miles away to area north of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and then deported from those areas peoples from that part of the world into the area that the original 10 tribes occupied. And they did this because they wanted to break up their culture, they wanted to tamp down any temptation for rebellion. And we're told something here in 2 Kings about these people. We're going to begin in verse 21. It says here that God tore Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat the king. And then Jeroboam did all these things and committed a great sin. And then in verse 24, we read that the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they took possession of Samaria and dwelt in the cities. So these were basically pagan people. They were Gentiles. They weren't Israelites. And it was so at the beginning of their dwelling there that they did not fear the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which killed some of them. So they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations whom you have removed, right, the 10 tribes of Israel, and placed in the cities of Samaria, do not know the rituals of the God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and indeed they are killing them because they do not know the rituals of the God of the land. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, send there one of the priests whom you brought from there, and let them go and dwell there, and let them teach all the rituals of the God of the land. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. And verse 29 is kind of critical, because this is a clue. However, every nation continued to make gods of its own, and put them in the shrines in the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in the cities where they dwelt. So what these people did is they worshipped, or tried to learn the worship of the true God of Israel from this Levite that was sent back to teach them. But at the same time, they had their false gods over here that they were also worshiping. Now, this is really interesting because so recently, in the past couple of decades, there are less than 1,000 Samaritans left, by the way, in this part of the world today. They've pretty much been dissipated. They've had a lot of interesting history, but there are less than 1,000 of them left. But scientists have gone in and taken DNA samples from them, and they found something very interesting. They found that the Y chromosome of these people, which is what comes from the father's line, has Israelite blood, and specifically from the Kohanim, which is the priestly class of Jews. In other words, they can pretty much prove genetically that these people are descended from Levites. But the female, the X chromosome, which the mother's side offers, is not. That's more Arabic, more up in that part of the world where these original people were deported from. So it's really interesting because it tends to back up what it says here in Scripture. So they had a religion. So they are, in a sense, half Jewish, if you think about it. So these people then had this religion that was kind of a combination of the true worship and worship of false gods. So now we're going to go forward to Ezra chapter 4. In the book of Ezra, interesting, we know that Ezra was sent back to Israel, to Jerusalem specifically, with instructions to rebuild the temple. And this was from Cyrus, the emperor, the king of Persia. And this is the next encounter that we have in Scripture with the Samaritans. And this is where the animosity begins. So in Ezra chapter 4, verse 1, we read this. Now when the adversaries, Judah and Benjamin, heard that the descendants of the captivity were building the temple of the Lord of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and the heads of the fathers' houses and said to them, let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do, and we have sacrificed to And remember, they had this mixture of a true worship and a false worship. You go back and read the prophets and you realize that one of the things that God had against Judah was that they also mingled religions of worship of the true God and the false God. They have learned their lesson, and they're coming back and they want to reestablish the true worship of God. So these people who are already in the land, these Samaritans, are coming up and saying, look, we worship the same God you do. Let us help you build the temple. You can understand why Ezra and his people did not want to take them up on this offer for help. They were afraid of committing the same sin that their ancestors had committed. But Zerubbabel in verse 3, and Joshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers of the houses of Israel said to them, you may do nothing with us to build a house for our God, but we alone will build the Lord God, our Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us. Then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building. So you're seeing this animosity build up. If you think of it from the Samaritans' point of view, they would have said, we offered to help, we were rudely rejected, we don't like these people anymore. We're going to try to stand in their way from building this temple. Ezra and his people, and subsequently their descendants, would say, these people tried to take away our worship of the true God. So you can see them beginning to butt heads here. So verse 4, they tried to discourage the people of Judah. Verse 5, they hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. So now they're beginning to lobby the central government way over in Persia. In the days of Artaxerxes also, Bishlam, Mithridates, Pebble, and the rest of the companions wrote to Artaxerxes, king of Persia, the letter in Aramaic script. And I'm going to skip down on this, but verse 10, this is their introduction to them. They're saying that we and the rest of the nations whom the great noble Osnappar took captive and settled in the cities of Samaria beyond the river and so forth. So they're identifying themselves here as Samaritans. So let's fast forward a few more years to the days of Nehemiah. Ezra rebuilt the temple. Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, and he runs into similar problems. Nehemiah chapter 4. He's going to run into similar problems in the rebuilding. So you see this animosity continuing to grow. It so happened when Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall. Sanballat was the governor of Samaria, by the way, which you'll see in a second. He was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. And he spoke before his brethren and said, and the army of Samaria, and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? And he mocks them. And eventually, he talks about how, even if a fox runs across the wall, this wall isn't going to stand, in verse 3. And then, when they finally did build the wall, in verse 6, the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, but the people had a mind to work. Now, it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, and the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored and the gaps were beginning to be closed, they became very angry. And all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Now, it's been said that history repeats. Or maybe doesn't repeat, but maybe history rhymes. When the people of Israel come back, even in our own day, in our own generation, they come back, the surrounding peoples tend to be very antagonistic toward them. Same thing here. The same people that were antagonistic to the Jews as they were returning to rebuild their walls, rebuild their temple, are the same people who are antagonistic against them today. With the possible exception of the Samaritans, who are such a small group that they really don't have a whole lot of influence. So you're beginning to see this, and then the animosity gets even deeper later on here and there in Nehemiah in chapter 6, where they write, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but they write to back to the headquarters of the Persian Empire, and are claiming that the Jews are going to rebel against the Persians. And they have death threats against Nehemiah. And you have this constant tension going on. Now, it was about this time, actually time of Ezra, that the Samaritans built their own temple at Mount Gerizim, Well, when the Greeks came in and took over that part of the world, the Samaritans tended to cooperate more with the Greeks than the Jews did. They allowed their temple to be used for pagan rites and turned it over to the Greeks in their pagan worship. You remember the Jews rebelled and the Samaritans would not support them. And you read about that in actually in secular history about the Maccabean revolt. The festival of Hanukkah is built around the Jewish revolt against the Greeks and when they threw them out. And it was from that the Hasmonean dynasty developed, which eventually became Herod's little fiefdom. But the Hasmoneans, in 130 BC, the Hasmonean king, John Hyrcanus, destroyed that Syrian temple. So you're beginning to have deeper animosity. You're beginning to burn down each other's churches and synagogues, which is a horrible thing to do. And in 100 BC, probably in retaliation, the Samaritans came back and desecrated the temple, the sanctuary in the temple, by throwing dead men's bones around. So when you read the New Testament about Jesus talking about dead men's bones, when he's talking to the Pharisees, they knew exactly what he was referring to, because these Samaritans were desecrating the Jewish temple with dead men's bones. Now when the Romans came in, they kind of put a lid on a lot of that, and out of the animosity was still there. And now we're going to go to the New Testament. We're going to see what Jesus says about these Samaritans. Gives you a brief background, and I want to turn to Luke chapter 9. Now, I have come to really appreciate reading the Gospels, and I think there is a huge lesson here in what Jesus is going to be teaching about the Samaritans. You probably know where I'm going to end up. I'm going to end up in a parable. I'm giving you the cultural background to what Jesus is doing with these parables. Now, I heard not too long ago, and I think this is true, you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I love spending time in the Gospels because I want to become like Jesus Christ. I want to become like him. I want to be able to think about people the way he thought about them. And I've come to really see the Gospels as being the center point of the Scripture, because everything seems to point toward the Gospels. And the book of Genesis, too, is another favorite book of mine. But we can see here how the rest of the Scriptures are going to feed into this. But in Luke chapter 9, beginning in verse 51, if we read this, it came to pass when the time had come for him to be received up, that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. This is talking about Jesus. And he sent messengers before his face, and as they went, they entered a village of the Samaritans to prepare for him. Now, Jesus did not have to go through Samaria to get from Galilee to Jerusalem. If you remember the geography of the area, there was Galilee in the north, was dominated by Jewish culture. Judea in the south, dominated by Jewish culture. And in the middle was the province of Samaria. So if you wanted to go from Galilee to Judea or the other way around, the shortest route was to go through Samaria, but the Jews rarely did that. They would cross the Jordan River, would scoot up the eastern bank of the river, and then cut back into their own territory so they could avoid the Samaritans. Remember, they didn't like each other very much. But Jesus decides to go through Samaria. So he steadfastly sets his face to go to Jerusalem through Samaria. And in verse 53, they did not receive him because his face was set for the journey to Jerusalem. This was not unusual. He sends sends some of his compadres to look for a place to stay and get something to eat. They wouldn't receive him because he's going to Jerusalem. And we are enemies with you because you are Jewish and you're going to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven as Elijah did? Now remember, earlier in this chapter, Jesus had given his disciples power to go out and heal people. And he sent them on a missionary journey, and they did great works, and they're coming back, and they're filled with all the zeal because of all the great works they had done. Let's call down fire on these people, like Elijah did. We have the power to do it. You've given us the power to do it. Well, Jesus had something a whole lot bigger in mind than destroying people who had dissed him. Jesus turns to them and he rebukes them. Rebuke is a word that is often used in the New Testament for something that you do to demons. This was a very strong rebuke. He rebuked them and saying, "You do not know what spirit you are of. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy lives, but to save them." And he just went out to another village. Jesus is saying, look, I'm here on a rescue mission. I'm not here to destroy people. I'm here on a rescue mission. You don't know what spirit you are of. You're listening to the wrong side of the spirit world. See what I mean when I say he was politically incorrect? He went the route that he was not expected to go. He took it on the chin and he was insulted because he had a bigger purpose. He set his face. He was steadfast. There was no wavering and no turning back. He had a mission among the Samaritans. Now let's go to John chapter 4. This is one that I have some time ago talked about in length. Gave a sermon on almost this entire chapter. I'm just going to skip through a few important things here. Because in this account, we run into some really interesting exchanges between Jesus and the Samaritan woman that tell us a little bit about what he is trying to accomplish and his heart. And how he treated people he was not supposed to, at least according to the culture of the day, supposed to be fraternizing with. So in chapter 4, verse 3, he leaves Judea and departs again to Galilee. And he needed to go through Samaria. Remember the geography. Samaria in the middle, Galilee in the north, Judea to the south. It's almost like he's feeling this compulsion to go up this 20 miles from Jerusalem to the area where the Samaritans were, when he could have gone around the whole territory. So he needed to do it. And as you read this, you see, it says here, he came to the city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being weary from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. So this was about noon. A woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." Now let me set the stage for you of why this is politically incorrect and extremely provocative. There are a couple of reasons why. First of all, he's a Jewish man talking to a Samaritan woman. He's a Jewish rabbi talking to a woman. But the third thing is he's asking her for a drink. It wasn't too many years ago in this part of the world where you could only use certain water fountains depending what the color of your skin was. It's the same thing here. She says, "You don't have anything to draw with. You want to drink out of my water jar?" Don't you think, I don't, we have a hard time maybe, 60 years or 50 years, whatever it is from that era in our own country. We may not think of it in those terms, but these people had such animosity, they didn't even want to drink water out of the same jug. Jesus, the Jewish man, Jesus, the politically incorrect man, says, "Give me a drink from your water jug." I'm not sure if I lived around here 60, 70 years ago that I would have had the gumption to be able to drink out of that other water fountain. I kind of think Jesus would have. I think he would have made a point. He's making a point here. Now it says he sent the disciples away, and then they have this little conversation. The woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman, for Jews have no dealing with Samaritans?" And Jesus said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." And the woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where are you going to get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" See, they pretended to be descendants of Israelites when it suited them, and they pretended not to be, like when the Greeks were there when it didn't suit them. And Jesus is over. He's looking at this individual as a woman, and he knows there's something. He's there for a reason. And Jesus gives her, a little theological talk about the fountain of living water and all of that. That's an interesting story in its own right for a different time. And then the woman said to her, "Sir, give," in verse 15, watch this. Watch the question that she asked and how Jesus answered it. The woman said, "Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet." Verse 19. She immediately goes into a theological question that is the point of contention between the Jews and the Samaritans. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place we want to worship. Which one of us is right? And Jesus tells her, essentially, we Jews are correct about worshiping in Jerusalem, at that temple, rather than this one. Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. So he's telling her, the Jews are right about this, but the time is coming when it doesn't matter where you're going to worship. You need to worship God in spirit and in truth. We Jews have access to the truth because we have the full Word of God. He says, the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such to worship him. And it doesn't matter if you're a Samaritan, or you're a Jew, or you're a Gentile. He's looking for those who worship in spirit and truth. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. Now look at verse 40. Remember I said this antagonism? She goes back and reports to the people in her village, and they come out and want to see this guy that she thinks is the Messiah. Look at verse 40. So when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. Jesus loved the Samaritans. And he reached out to them, and not only did they reach back, they became politically incorrect and had him stay there for 2 days. You know, we have a lot of division in our country today. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you sit on. If you think your guy, whichever, whether he's red or blue, or you know what side of the political aisle he's on, if you think he's going to bring unity to the country, you're going to be sorely mistaken, because politics in this country has become the art of division. Break people up into little groups and keep them mad at each other so that you can pick them off for votes. The only way we are really going to bring people together in this country, and I'm absolutely convinced, is through this man that we're reading about in John chapter 4, in fact, throughout all the Gospels. He has a way of bringing people together that none of our political leaders will ever be capable of doing until they acknowledge his lordship. This is what Jesus is doing there. Now let's turn to Luke chapter 10. The most famous of all parables. The parable of the Good Samaritan. It begins in verse 25. Here's the story of this. I'm in the wrong gospel. Luke 10, verse 25. Behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? It's a good question. He said to him, what is it written in the law? What is your reading of it? What's interesting to me is that he does not say you don't need to do anything. He's saying God has certain expectations of you. It isn't just believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved, which I think is taken out of context so often. Saying you have certain expectations that God expects of us if we accept him as our Savior. And he answered and said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live. He gave the right answer. But he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Think about it. Remember I said earlier, it was 20 miles from the temple in Jerusalem to the temple at Mount Gerizim, where the Samaritans worship. Who do you think the neighbor was? Do you think people in Blue Springs were neighbor people in Kansas City? Who lived next to the Jewish people, both from Galilee and from Judea? Who was my neighbor? Do you need to see why he uses the word Samaritan, uses the Samaritan the way he does in this parable? So Jesus answered and said, a certain man went from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed him, leaving him half dead. So here's this guy, half dead. He's got his clothes stripped off. He's in the ditch. And that road, particular road that they were walking along, was tried to ruin our temple, who tried to get the Persians to come in and destroy us, who threw dead men's bones into our sanctuary. Oh, we don't remember the time we went in there and destroyed their temple. We're not thinking about that. But these icky Samaritans came by where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. So he uses his own oil, uses his own wine, uses his own beast of burden. He walks while this injured man is riding on his donkey, takes him to an inn, stays up with him all night, nursing him back to health, takes 2 coins from his own pocket. A denarii was a day's wages, so think of it in terms of he gives the guy $1,000 in cash and says, take care of him and stay here until I come back. And if you owe any more, I'll make good on it. A Samaritan doing this for a Jewish man. Think about that. Take care of him, whatever word you spend when I come again, I will repay you. Now, Jesus asked here an interesting question. So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? What was the original question? The man asked, who is my neighbor? Jesus turns it around. He's saying, if the role was reversed, would you, an Israelite, have rescued the Samaritan? He says, who was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? Who is my neighbor? The lawyer is saying, who is my neighbor? Jesus is saying, be a neighbor. Who was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? If the roles were reversed, would you, an Israelite, have rescued the Samaritan? Jesus is not only saying you should love your neighbor, but that you should be a good neighbor. Yes, even those neighbors who are just 20 miles away from Jerusalem, up there in Samaria, the people whom you despise more than any other. Now, I was thinking about this, and thinking, this is just a tremendous teaching lesson. I mean, clearly, this is the most well-known of all the parables. But I'm trying to bring it down to something maybe that we can understand a little more clearly. Well, I found an article in the July 30th, 2018 National Review. And they extracted this story from the BBC. It's still online. I checked the BBC article, it's still online. I'm going to read to you what it says here. Farmers in central Nigeria fled their village when about 300 gunmen attacked, firing guns into the air and burning houses. Most of the farmers were Christians. They sought refuge in a predominantly Muslim neighborhood nearby. The local imam took charge, leading 262 men, women, and children into safety into his house and mosque. When the gunmen caught up with him, he refused to let them enter the buildings and said no to their demand to hand over the people inside. The gunmen threatened to set the mosque on fire. The imam prostrated himself, wailed, and pleaded with them to leave. They did, surprising him, although they set a couple of churches on fire on their way out. Before moving to a camp for displaced persons, the refugees stayed with the imam for 5 days. Not once did they ask us to leave, one of them said, not even for them to pray in the mosques. For his own security, the imam asked the BBC, which reported the story, to preserve his anonymity. Who is my neighbor? Someone once asked Jesus. The Good Samaritan has many faces. One of them belongs to the good imam. I'm going to end with a passage from Matthew 23, or Matthew 25. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? Then the king will reply, truly I tell you, whenever you did that for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me.